So you can listen to that if you want to. I don't recommend it. It's bad for your heart, probably. But something happened in my head that I don't know has happened before. I've been looking for a number of years for somebody, anybody on the left who's willing to sit down and have a civil dialogue. Earlier, I mentioned the Young Turks, and they have had on people as extreme as David Duke, although they made fun of him. They've also had Jared Taylor, who's not as extreme, but still outside of the mainstream. And yeah, Cenk called him an idiot and mocked him. They've also had on Dennis Prager, and Cenk Uygur yelled at him, and so did Anna. But they're willing to have these people on and talk to them. And Dennis Prager's a liberal, really. He's a classical liberal that's in the Republican Party. But they still treat their guests badly, but they're willing to have them on. I mean, Cenk has also had Scott Adams on. Scott Adams is basically a classical liberal in the Republican Party. And they actually had the entire time had a civil dialogue. No name calling. It was pretty good. But I've been looking for a while for somebody on the left that would be reasonable so I can listen to them and consider what they say and see if it holds up. No, it doesn't. Spoiler alert. But it's still good to sometimes hear an alternative opinion if it's presented in a reasonable way, a way that I can stomach and then critique it later. And the bad part is Stephen Bonnell has had decent debates with Nick Fuentes, with Carl Benjamin, who used to be a classic liberal. Now he's moving to the right. And he's had pretty decent debates with them. But I really think that some of it is Trump broke his brain, and then also Joe Biden being president broke Stephen's brain. I feel bad on the one hand. I think that also on a personal level, him having marriage problems affected him mentally. And if I were to see him, I want to be very clear, I would treat him as kindly as I can. And I don't wish him harm. But it's specifically because I don't wish him harm that I kind of don't want to associate with him, because he wishes me harm. He perpetuates wishing harm on me and on my people. And I can provide over on Substack, which is where I put my sources, links to videos of him doing what I said, talking about celebrating people's deaths and so on. And it would be very irrational. It would not make any sense for me to engage in a debate with someone like that. It's not a good look. It's not professional. And it's reasonable to isolate and ostracize that from political discourse. I would debate someone exactly like Stephen Bonnell that isn't named Stephen Bonnell but holds the exact same positions if this hypothetical person was willing to condemn all violence, not make excuses, and lie. And I don't know actually if this guy has done this or not, but there's a guy named Ben Burgess who's debated Curtis Yarvin. And some of his lines of attack against Curtis Yarvin, and Curtis Yarvin is hardly a man of the right. He's more libertarian, sort of right wing, kind of like a neo-reactionary or reactionary. But I would argue he probably leans more libertarian. But he debated Curtis Yarvin, and some of his lines of attack were not in good faith. But to my knowledge, Ben Burgess, excuse me, sorry, that's my dog. But to my knowledge, Ben Burgess will condemn violence. The Young Turks, although they also don't always argue in good faith, they condemn violence unapologetically, no excuses. And you can see that in the aforementioned appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored, where Anna Kasparian really attacked Destiny, and then Destiny ends up attacking her back and accusing her of a number of just really ridiculous things. And again, I'm saying Destiny and Stephen Bonnell interchangeably. I want to be clear for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, but that ended up being a rule. I created that rule because I have to look out for my safety and the safety of my supporters. If I were to go to an event or some kind of a live debate and debate Stephen Bonnell, how do I know that he's not going to threaten my fans or threaten me? When he says things like, and you could also see this too, there's videos of him saying conservatives, whenever they go to events, they need to be afraid. There's video and audio of Stephen Bonnell saying that they need to be afraid. He wants conservatives to be afraid. And that's a veiled threat. And I condemn that. And I will say, I will not debate Stephen Bonnell or anyone who similarly refuses to condemn violence unless there is pretty strong repentance. If he changes the other direction and says, I was so wrong, I'm so sorry, and then has a track record of condemning violence and really changing, okay, that can be forgiven. But I have to look out for me. All right, let's go to the next story.